In 2015, Elizabeth Holmes commanded a $9 billion valuation, presenting a public image as a visionary whose technology would overhaul the entire medical diagnostics industry. 7 years later, Sam Bankman-Fried's crypto exchange reached $32 billion in valuation, with investors praising his ability to manage complex global risks. Both empires evaporated. Magazine covers were replaced by police escorts as these companies moved from peak hype into total liquidation and federal fraud trials. These downfalls suggest that when the pressure mounts, a founder's internal framework carries more weight than the technology itself. To understand why some companies survive while others shatter, we have to look at the specific blueprints these leaders followed. In 2009, Airbnb's weekly revenue flatlined at $200. To stay afloat, the founders were forced to sell novelty cereal boxes out of their apartment, a desperate tactic to pay their rent and keep the servers running. Meanwhile, Uber was burning billions of dollars every year while struggling under a leadership style that prioritized aggressive growth over internal accountability and employee safety. These companies were both failing, and yet they didn't collapse. They managed to survive the same type of existential friction that destroyed FTX and Theranos. The difference lies in the strategy. Founders tend to operate using one of two models, as autocratic illusionists who prioritize hype, or transformational architects who rely on structured change management. This diagram shows John Kotter's 8-step model for change management. Step 2 focuses on building a guiding coalition, a group of experts who have the power and the expertise to validate every move the company makes. This is the board Elizabeth Holmes chose to oversee Theranos. Instead of seeking technical validation, she assembled a board designed for prestige. Look at the backgrounds: politicians, military generals, and diplomats. Without biomedical scientists, no one had the expertise to recognize the disaster. FTX operated with even less oversight. At the time of its bankruptcy, the company lacked a formal board of directors. New CEO John J. Ray III testified that the company had zero global risk management, calling it a flagrant failure of corporate governance. Contrast this with Dara Khosrowshahi's arrival at Uber. He immediately decentralized decision-making, giving regional managers the authority to solve problems locally rather than waiting for a top-down command from San Francisco. A board filled with celebrities but no industry expertise isn't a coalition, it's a marketing tactic. In high-stakes industries, an expert board is the only thing that prevents an illusion from becoming a crime. Deontological ethics centers on the moral duty to do no harm. In business, this means prioritizing the safety of customers and the honesty of data over short-term profits or the desire to win. Illusionist leaders tend to view this duty as an obstacle. Theranos faked its results on competitor machines and used non-disclosure agreements to silence whistleblowers who tried to warn the public that the tests were inaccurate. In 2011, Airbnb faced a massive ethical test when a host's apartment was completely ransacked. It was the exact type of catastrophe that could have ended the company's reputation for safety. Instead of hiding the incident, CEO Brian Chesky took full responsibility. He rejected advice to stay quiet, instead establishing a $1 million host guarantee to ensure no host would ever be left behind by a guest's actions. This transparency creates a culture where mistakes are caught before they become systemic frauds. Taking the financial hit in the short term builds the trust needed for long-term survival. The final step in the Kotter model is anchoring new approaches in the culture. This ensures that the company's values remain intact even during a crisis, like the COVID-19 pandemic. As travel stopped, Airbnb leadership pivoted to focus on local stays within driving distance. They also refunded millions to guests out of their own pockets, prioritizing their reputation for fairness over their immediate cash reserves. Uber followed a similar blueprint, rapidly shifting its entire workforce and infrastructure toward food delivery as ride-sharing demand vanished. They moved with the reality of the market rather than fighting it. Autocratic leaders tend to double down on their own fiction when the market shifts. Theranos continued to claim its technology worked, even as patient misdiagnoses piled up, and FTX continued to spend customer money right up until the day it filed for bankruptcy. Leaders who apply these frameworks can pivot during a crisis. Those who rely on their own hype eventually hit a wall they cannot climb. The fake it till you make it mentality suggests success eventually catches up to the hype. But in industries like healthcare and finance, that methodology often leads to catastrophe. When leaders enforce absolute secrecy and punish dissent, they build rigid structures that cannot absorb feedback. Like a glass tower with a hidden flaw, it looks impressive until a single shock causes it to shatter. Genuine unicorns are built to survive those shocks. They rely on ethical duties, expert coalitions, and a culture that values truth over the leader's ego. To protect your own organization, you have to audit your advisors. They must have the expertise to identify your blind spots and the authority to tell you when you are wrong. A crisis will always expose a company's foundation. In the end, it's the ethical frameworks and the people around you, not just the technology, that determine if you survive the storm.